And welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Who would be a rugby pundit, eh? After a weekend like that, Six Nations, who knows what the results are going to be? Completely blew my mind. Got it the same in Super Rugby Pacific, all sorts of crazy results, really competitive competitions as of the weekend, seeing some interesting upsets. We're going to break into all of that as the show goes on. We're going to chat about who actually is the best team in the world. When you look at Ireland and South Africa, and then I suppose you've got New Zealand and France as well in there with them. A lot of chat online about that. We'll have a look at Super Rugby, we'll have a look at Aupiki, we'll have a look at your comments and questions, and of course, the tipping comp, where if you win our competition, you get a chance to come on the show as well. So before we get into the show, let's intro the guys. As ever, James Parsons. Who would be a tipster, eh?
Oh, it was a tough weekend. I was about to hang up the rifle and say, I don't think I could come in on Monday. It's not many I picked, that's for sure. Got the power, though.
At Bryn Hall, tipping the Crusaders is a dangerous deal these days. You don't want to go 0-16 this year.
Oh, I don't. So, yeah, it was, man, I think I had two picks. I think you guys are all the same as well. I think you didn't get anything right. So, but it's great for the competition. I think rugby's back definitely in terms of the competitiveness of the competition. So, yeah, no good for if you're a Crusader fan, but great for the competition as well, though.
Absolutely outstanding.
Well, they've had a good run, those fans.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. They paid their dues. Like, it's time for the fish to stop biting, right?
God, I'm sure they'll come back. They'll be there or thereabouts at the pointy end.
Now, one of the big conversations we've seen online through the week, especially in the context of England beating Ireland, is who is the best team in the world. South African fans love to debate it. Irish fans love to debate it. We headed into the game on the weekend where Irish pundits were saying anything from Simon Zebo saying 35 plus against England at Twickenham to we had another pundit, who was it, Jamie Heaslip, saying that this Ireland team is compared to the momentum of the Carter and McCaw All Blacks who won 2 World Cups. We've had all sorts of wonderful things, and then the Springboks are biting back saying, well, you haven't won a World Cup. I think Robbie Fleck, Victor Matfield, all sorts of former Springboks, Joel Stransky, they're all into it. So let's get into it. The best team in the world. To start off with, let's figure out how you figure that out. Because if it's about consistency, let's say over the last 5 years, that's one thing. Or is it winning the big games when it really matters, and who cares about the rest, which appears to be the South African mentality?
I think it's hard to say who cares about the rest. That's the one hard thing for me, because in New Zealand and as an All Blacks team, the expectation is to win every test. So, but if you look back of our history and our struggles at the World Cup, we were always the most consistent team through that 4-year period, but couldn't get over that hurdle. So I genuinely do believe, for two reasons, I still think South Africa are the best team in the world, because one, you're only as good as your last game, and that was a World Cup final win, and they haven't had an opportunity to present themselves. So I don't think they can go back. You know, when it mattered, they stand up. And yes, their winning percentage, you know, through that 4-year cycle is lower than most, but they also do probably test out their squads a lot more than other nations, depending on if players are in Japan or France or whatever. So they do use a number of players. And I mean, that could be a positive thing in terms of building that depth for the main events. But Ireland are, as the All Blacks used to be, the most consistent currently in between that, you know, I suppose that time between World Cups. So,
Bryn, if you look at the stats, Ireland since 2020 have won 79%, France have won 78%, South Africa 69%, and New Zealand 72% over that period since 2020. You know, try to keep it relatively recent. Ireland have won their last 3 games against the Springboks, including a World Cup win. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I think, yeah, if you want to look at the stats, 79% and Ireland having the wool over South Africa, but like we've talked about, the World Cup, whoever's the winner of the World Cup is the best team in the world. I'm sorry. You know, there's consistency in everything, and there's been times in New Zealand where we were the best team consistently for a long period of time, but not been able to get the World Cup wins. But, you know, I think for me, South Africa have gone back to back. Yes, they don't get it right. Some parts in that 4-year cycle, they rotate or they don't get the results of winning the rugby championship or anything like that. But when it comes to push and shove, they're the defending and 2-time champions in the last eight years. So for me, it's the South Africans. But if you're going to go on percentages and around in between the World Cups, we've talked around a lot with Ireland, how consistent they are, and the brand of footy that they have played has been world leading. But coming to the big events, they haven't got the job done. So I'd go South Africa.
I think if you ask any player, they'll take a World Cup. It'd be interesting, you know, potentially to ask, you know, Goldie or someone that's here at Sky that would have they taken the 95 World Cup win and lost a few tests in between that 4-year cycle. I think most people would take that World Cup win.
Yeah, you'd like to think so. I mean, that tour in South Africa where they finally won,
yeah, 96.
I mean, that was pretty big historically, and in comparison to a World Cup, probably harder to win, you could probably argue, but yeah.
And it meant a hell of a lot because it was the year after they obviously lost that final. So, yeah, I still think, I think everyone would want to win a World Cup, and maybe 79% is not that high, though, when you think about it. When the All Blacks were dominating that 4-year period, they were definitely 85, 86% in terms of that winning percentage. So I was quite surprised, but I actually like that stat purely because it shows how tight international rugby is, and that, as you mentioned before, that unpredictability of result is what engages fans a lot more.
Well, and heading into this particular game, the idea was that the Irish results are actually predictable. They were scoring 30 plus, they were winning everything. They were going to England, who apparently can't attack, were focusing on a rush defence that they couldn't get right, Bryn. And then, hey presto, England turn up. And, I mean, Ireland pushed them hard, but they won it.
Well, I think that comes back to the competitiveness of that Six Nations at the moment. I think it's the world-leading competition in terms of international rugby. You look at Italy over Scotland. We talked around Scotland obviously trying to get that win, but Italy showed that their growth in the last probably not just before the World Cup, but the new coaching regime that's come in has given them a belief. So, yeah, I just think at this time, when it comes to international rugby, there's just so many teams on their day that can win. And you look at England on the weekend. We'll go more around the Six Nations, but yeah, it's a great time for international rugby. A lot of teams are really competitive, and hopefully it continues for the next couple of years.
Less is more. Less is more. Don't practice attack.
Yeah.
And then it comes to life.
Are you quoting yourself?
Yeah, I am. I'm just doing a humble brag. But it's not very humble, is it? But, I mean, their attack came to life. And there are some key stats that Ireland, lost. England really matched, if in some instances dominated the collision area, which just hasn't been the case for this Irish team in the Six Nations. When they beat France, they dominated France. They held them to sort of 32% gain line in that carry stat, whereas England had 50%. So 1 out of 2 carries you're getting across the gain line is pretty efficient against that Irish D. So that was a big point, and that doesn't allow you to sort of set and put that line speed pressure on and force those skills. And I thought England really looked to play. Probably the only time I would have liked them to play a little bit more was, I don't know if you remember, but when there was the advantage and Ford took the pot drop goal. I don't understand why they've got such a great skill set in the air, like a little crossfield kick or a dinking behind. I just don't know why the drop goal, yes, at the last play, definitely take that, Marcus Smith, but I would like them to just sort of stretch themselves when it is that advantage to try and score some tries. Because they're so comfortable going in threes, but they scored tries and they won test matches. So they've definitely shown they can do it.
I think a lot of their shape was actually really good in terms of playing really flat. Ford was flat to the line. He had 3 or 4 outside him and been able to pick runners when they were going forward. And then I thought, Alex Mitchell, in terms of their speed of ball, being able to then play on top of teams was a lot more. And I think obviously their fullback and wingers, I think, they brought a bit of flair and X factor in terms of their ability to beat defenders one-on-one and get over their advantage line. So, yeah, look, I was thoroughly impressed. I know we talked around their defence, and I think it's going to take a bit of time. There were a lot of, there were times in that game when you look at James Lowe's second try, then when Slade comes out of that line, just trying to obviously bring that line speed pressure, but it is going to take a bit of time. But I did see a massive shift in terms of their defence. They were coming in very, very hard, very similar to the South Africans. And I think in time, you'd have to think if they're going to continue that, it's going to get a lot harder to be able to try and beat them defensively. But Jim, there was one thing that I was surprised around there. I think knowing and with how the Irish, they adapt on the run, they didn't use their attacking kicking game. Crowley and co didn't look to try and get to that space where you did see it a lot. And I think, sometimes with their shape, wingers aren't in that space, but there is a loose forward. So maybe, moving forward, a loose forward might be able to be in those pitches a little bit better because there was space to try and get there, which they didn't execute on the weekend.
Ben Earl is a guy, every time I've watched him play for England, he stands out. Like, I don't feel like people talk about him in the same way they talk about Savia or Aldrit, but he is a quality loose forward, particularly with ball in hand. Yeah,
and I thought Underhill was really good as well, especially defensively. But Earl's work rate, 20 carries, 12 tackles, and when you've got a hot hand, you want to give it to these guys. But He does need a little bit of support because that's a high carry and tackle count. He was second in the tackles and obviously first in the carries. But he's an athlete. When he breaks through that line, he's just got great balance, great strength and a great explosive feed. I thought Lawrence was great as well. And I really enjoyed Furbank. I thought at 15, he's quick, he's rapid. So some new blood coming through, I think, and finding, because that Lawrence performance is a little bit like the Tuolangi performance. When they dominated the All Blacks, they really dominated that collision and got across that gain line and allowed them to play with that pace. And they won by 1 point, so Ireland still fought well, even though they didn't play as well as I'd like. They pushed them to the end. So it's not like, I suppose England are saved, but 28 defenders beaten on attack. Like, these are stats you sort of normally see in single figures for England. So they were great both sides of the ball.
So there's plenty to talk about, I suppose, going into this last weekend where Wales will play Italy, Ireland will play Scotland, and France will play England. The competition is still on the line if Scotland can get up.
Well, they'll need bonus point, but
yeah,
it would have been nice if they'd got the result against Italy. I know that's, for Italy's fans, it's great, but it would have really brought some tension if it was just a win-lose scenario. So they're going to have to chance their arm. And look, they chanced their arm against Italy. They just didn't, I suppose, get reward for the amount of ball they had, the amount of, I suppose, offloads, defenders beaten, clean breaks. It was all there. They just couldn't get enough points. And maybe similar to Ireland, maybe just expecting it was going to happen. And Italy hung in there and they hung really tough. But also, when their opportunities presented, they came away with a full complement of points, whereas, I don't think Scotland would be happy, especially a Finn Russell side, to go into the 22 10 times and only come away with 4 tries, versus Italy 5 times for 3.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
Bryn, I feel like every time we talk Scotland up, they disappoint us the week after.
Yeah.
Like, it is year on year on year. It is just the way they've got so much potential.
I think this one probably hurts the most in terms of this result. I think, the last couple of times it's been, against Ireland or in England or a France that they've kind of had the opportunity to win a game like that in a big moment. But I think this one, we were expecting them, considering how they've gone and the kind of, I guess, the praise that we're having for them in this competition, thinking that it'll go into the last round, which it still does. They still need a bonus point, but yeah, they'll be pretty disappointed. And I think, look, in that first 30 minutes, they had 72% of possession. And I think it just comes back to the ability of them not being able to execute and the chances that they did have. It just seemed like they were playing a little bit frantic and not as clinical and ruthless as they usually are. And to Italy's credit, look, there were a lot of times in that game where you'd have to say the Italians would fold over. The Scottish started really, really well. They came back, Scotland had their moments again, but they had that fight to be able to come back into the game. And so, that's very, we don't expect that from Italy. And so for them to be able to do that, hopefully this will leapfrog them now to where they have belief, I think most importantly, that they can do it. And, hopefully they have one more game. And then throughout the duration of the next couple of years, we're going to see an improved version of Italy, because I think their attacking ability and their breakdown work, and even defensively, just moving and being able to be in game consistently, it's much improved from the Rugby World Cup. So yeah, great result for Italy.
Let's have a look at this weekend's games then, because I suppose, Wales v Italy is by the by. Well, let's just say who you think is going to win that first before we get into the 2 games that matter for the championship. What do you think, Chip?
I'll go Wales.
Wales?
Where's that being played? That's at Millennium, eh?
Cardiff, yeah.
Oh man, the Italians were impressive. They've been impressive the last 2 weeks. No, I'll go Italy.
Yeah.
Just been really impressed with the last 2 games. But the last 2 games that they've played, it wins in any stadium. So whether they're able to do it one more time, I'm not too sure, but have taken confidence the last 2 games. So I'll pick Italy.
Superb. Okay, so then there's Ireland, Scotland. Yeah, Ireland win it, they win the whole thing. Can you see them going down against Scotland in this game?
No. At home, losing to England, I just think they're going to be better. Had they potentially beaten England and Scotland had won big, you'd probably... And I just think Scotland are going to give them a lot of opportunity because they've got to score tries. They have to get that bonus point. And as we've seen, the more rugby you play, the more opportunity you're giving because you turn the ball over and you're giving the ball back in a pretty prime spot in the field.
Do you think Scotland will take that mindset? We've got to score the bonus point? Or is that something where you take it once you've got yourself ahead? Like, how do you play that?
Well, it's all or nothing. For me, it would be Yeah, I'd be going any penalties. I'd be going to the corner early. Try and get them under your belt. Then you can play the tactical kicking game and threes and so forth. But yeah, it's all or nothing. And I think, look, they've got the perfect guy, Finn Russell, to do it. If he has a day, this can happen. But I think off the back of the England loss, this will be a razor-sharp Ireland team.
And they're going to need to win 7+. They can't give a bonus point to Ireland.
No, I think, but I think also as well, like,
Didn't think about that.
I think I do. Ireland will come back with a vengeance and being pretty disappointed. But if you do look at Scotland and even on the weekend, the amount of ball that they did have, they give a lot, or they make a lot of opportunities for themselves. So I don't think there's going to be a problem in terms of them being able to try put the Ireland team under pressure. I think there will be opportunities, but I think what it's been like the last 2-3 years in big games, they haven't been able to take them. So they'll know that they'll have to score 4 tries like you guys are talking about, but they do have the ability with Finn Russell and the way that they do play it, they're going to have an opportunity to score some points. It's whether they're able to do it under pressure. But in saying that, I still think Ireland, they'll come back after that review and they'll be a lot sharper and there'll be a little bit more steel, I think, in that breakdown, which I think they lost on the weekend against England.
They're going to have to be more dominant on defence, though, as well. Like, they let Italy get 50% or 49% gain line. They still tackled at 91%. But the tackles are passive. Like, Ireland was, 39% against England. Like, they were physically met and put behind the advantage line. If Scotland sit and wait, and 91%, I get it, is good. But if you're still getting over the gain line, you're making tackles, they eventually go over the try line. So they will need to show a bit of starch defensively as well.
Yeah. And then there's the France-England game, and these two games, kind of the results work concurrently to whatever's going to happen as far as who wins this championship. France at home against England. France are a touch of a mixed bag. Where does this go?
For me, I'm going to need like a team naming situation.
Yeah.
Because the French will score points. So it's similar for England going into the Ireland game. England away from home. I thought George Ford was good, don't get me wrong. I just think Marcus Smith could really open up this attack off the back of that performance. But yeah, I mean, it would be hard to drop him after, he sort of orchestrated and then Marcus Smith had a good impact off the bench. So I think England would probably be the more secure bet if I was going to bet on them. Because you just don't know which French side, and they gave a lot of opportunity on the weekend, and I just think England might have the better ability to pounce on those opportunities than Wales did.
Yeah. Interestingly, though, the French, when we looked at those stats we were looking at before, against the other top 4 nations, Ireland, New Zealand and South Africa, actually have the best average winning percentage over the last 5 years against the top teams. Better than Ireland, better than New Zealand, better than South Africa.
They are missing 2 critical ingredients.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's no doubt about that. So, Bryn, where do you see this going, France v England?
Yeah, it's hard because I think, obviously if it's with Dupont and Intermac, then I think that's an easy call for the French, especially being at home. But I think with the way that England are playing and especially how they did on the weekend, if they can replicate that and they'll have a little bit more time to try and get that line speed defense and get those connections, which I think is going to be pretty important against the French. They can score from anywhere, whether it's off counter-attack or just in general the way with their offload game is. So I think the physicality and the breakdown which they were able to do against the Irish and stop them and being able to, I guess, force passes under pressure is going to be really important against the French. And I think they can marry up both games. They can have that attacking game, and then if they feel they need to go into that kind of suffocating kicking game and effort areas, then they can go into that as well. But what I do love about the English team is their intent. And everything they do has a great mindset, and it's 100% all the time. So when you've got a team that has that intent and mindset consistently, good things tend to happen. So I'll go the English to get the result against the French on the weekend.
Well, that's what we're looking at for the Six Nations. Let's move on to Super Rugby. The Chiefs against the Reds. Amazing result. The Reds were very good against the Hurricanes the week before. They are a very strong side, and they appear to be on the up under Les Kiss. But I don't think people saw this win over the Chiefs quite coming, 25-19. Why did you like the Reds?
Well, they played to their strengths, didn't they? And I think they defended at world-class levels. 5 penalties, 91% tackle, and it was about pretty much 50% possession. So they really matched the Chiefs' attack. I'm not sure, and it's nothing on Joshuani, but I felt like when Sean moved back to fullback, their attack mojo, he just has that extra bit of pace and found the way, because the Chiefs still got 14 clean breaks. They did get across the gain line a lot of the time, but the scrambled D and the desperation of this Queensland side put in that maul into context. Like, they have very, very good forward pack. Like, that maul's, it's almost like the Brumbies. Remember when Pocock was scoring about 5 tries a game? It seems to be pretty hard to stop. So they've got some assets there, and I think they're probably only going to get better and better. Les Kiss's touches are only going to get better and better on this squad, and a lot of belief. You can see how much it means to them as well, how much they celebrated. So for Bryn and I, we obviously picked top 5 being New Zealand sides, but I think that's been thrown on its head dramatically. Even the Tars probably will feel that Highlanders game got away on them, and these Aussie teams are really stepping up.
They are.
Yeah.
And what could the Chiefs have done better to being closer into that game and taking it out?
They had a lot of mistakes in that game. I think they had in the first half, the first 40 minutes, they had 10 turnovers and 7 handling errors. So they weren't being able to be as ruthless as they were in the past 2 games. And I think defensively the Reds did really, really well. I think, the phase play shift that I've talked about with the Chiefs, they ask a lot of questions, but I think connections wise, I think on the edge with their centres and their wingers and everybody being on the same page, even though the Chiefs weren't able to score because I think their own execution errors probably cost them. But, in a lot of that time, they defended really, really well. And I thought, the likes of, McDermott, I thought Harry Wilson was energetic and at his best self. And I think being able to win that contact area with Uru as well. I think they've got a hard-nosed forward pack. I know Morgan Tiranuri talked around their forward pack probably being the weakest in the Australian competition. But I think, man, you look at the forward pack, man, they get through their work. Comes to line out more, they've got a very strong set piece. They get into that 22-metre zone, but they're not afraid to go long phases, both defensively and on attacking-wise with their forward pack. So, look, I think the Reds, they will be pretty proud of that performance. And I think, it's honestly, I wasn't expecting after 3 rounds these Australian teams to be where they are right now. So, yeah, it's really good for the competition, I believe, and especially the Chiefs, who we thought were going to be unbeatable for this weekend alone. So,
you mentioned that phase play. It felt like sometimes Josh and Damien were both at first receiver, and it's like, they've got so used to Sean just playing his fullback role and it's Damien's ship. And I just felt at times Damien was actually the second pivot out the back a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And whether that confusion of having that dual playmaker role just didn't quite suit the way their mojo had been and the way they were playing.
We've had questions about that in recent weeks, haven't we, about pure fullbacks versus the confusion of dual playmakers, and there you go.
It is a big change, because they are total different players, Josh and Sean. And, if you look at the last 2 years, Sean's role has been pretty important in the success of the Chiefs.
Yeah.
So you'd probably have to, and again, Josh is playing really well. Don't get me wrong, he's killing it. But sometimes, they say styles make fights, and it seems to be when Sean's at 15, he really does have that injection from the back, and he owns that. He doesn't try to be a first receiver. And sometimes it's just not your night. Like that grubber kick. I mean, I know McLaughlin Phillips is a talent, but that was just the most unfortunate bounce ever.
Yeah, it was.
For Coombs family. So there are sometimes it's just not your night. And I do think the error count is always high with New Zealand teams when you go to Queensland. Bryn, you'll know this. The humidity, the ball is just like soap. And especially in that first 40, 11 visits into the 22, 2 tries, that's just not Chiefs standard. But it's actually really, really hard to control that ball. And maybe just tried too hard. Even that knock on over the line, I think it was Tupou Vati, just dropping the ball. And it's just that greasy nature. Had they been in Hamilton, it's probably nowhere near as challenging.
Yeah.
Get those Tony Brown, Byron Keller gloves on. When you ever played with gloves on?
No, man, my dad wouldn't let me.
Mikey Harris was a big fan of the gloves.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, big fan of the gloves.
Well, he played over in Brisbane for a while. Did he play with them when he was there?
I don't know. He must have. Well, he always did with Harbour.
Yeah.
Hell of a setup. I think he even nipped the fingers off.
Oh, really? Yeah. Certainly in cricket, I always played with the batting gloves, with the inners with them nipped off.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, just to
release a bit of moisture.
Better feel through the fingertips. Not that it helped me score runs.
Yeah.
But
you felt good.
But I looked good when I went out there with the appropriate equipment on.
Yeah.
Always. So before we move on, the Reds are a really interesting outfit. If they get a win this weekend, and let's say that the Crusaders get up for their first win and beat the Canes, the Reds could well be on top of the table. And I don't think anyone saw that coming. We caught up in the pre-season with Reds captain Tate McDermott to ask him a little bit about what they're trying to achieve as a side under Les Kiss.
Well, mate, before we get going, let's talk about, you got a new coach, Les Kiss, coming in this year. Obviously, highly experienced over in Europe. How has that changed the way that you guys are doing things, that influence that he has from his time over there?
Yeah, things are very different. Obviously, the way kind of Thorny saw the game and the way Les sees the game are a little bit different. He's kind of built on those foundations that Thorny laid for us. And, I guess that kind of style we saw with London Irish, he's brought that across and he tied it into our, I guess, when we're playing good footy, our DNA, we've got offloads, we've got boys playing free and, expressing themselves. So we saw 30 minutes of what we're capable of in our trial match on the weekend. But I guess, for us, it's just about having the confidence to really be aggressive with our style of play, testing teams in those wider channels. Mate, it's exciting.
You are obviously... are a key cog for Queensland, and I suppose 9 and 10 is critical, but 10 there's a little bit of a logjam. Looking at sort of the pre-season first few rounds, who do you think will get the nod there?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the experience of James O'Connor, and then you've got 3 young fellas nipping at his heels. So I think Harry McLaughlin-Phillips is in a really good place at the moment. He's positioned himself well with a couple of good performances. But then you've also got guys like Tommy Liner, a world-class goal kicker, a great boot, and Lawson, who's a great communicator. So we're lucky we've got those guys there. We've got depth in that jersey, and it'll be interesting. I think Harry is the front runner, but we'll see how we go.
We obviously know a lot about O'Connor and I suppose a little bit about Liner, but Harry, what is his strength? Is he flat to the line, or is he a tactical kicker?
He just takes the defence on all the time. So flat at the line, makes good decisions, but he's a natural runner of the ball. So I guess probably the most similar to James.
Yeah. And I suppose James played a little bit of 12, and I'm pretty sure he played 12 against the win you guys had against the Chiefs. And tactically, his kicking that night were around those 50-22s were the absolute weapon that probably gave you the ability to get that one.
Yeah, I mean, James is a talented player. And like you said, he's experienced. He knows when to kick, when to run. And he's been really good around Harry's development at 10, teaching him those intricacies that maybe he didn't have at the start of his career. And it's great to see him giving back to Harry. And it's only going to be good for our team.
If there's one person in your squad that he's got a man crush on, it's Fraser McWright.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us that he's not perfect? Is there something about Fraser McWright that isn't perfect?
There's a bit, I don't know if I can say much.
I like him even more now.
He ticks all the boxes.
He is exceptional, and what I refer to him is he's almost a young Michael Hooper in terms of his game style. He's got the ability to impact a game on attack, ability to do it at the breakdown defensively, and he's a leader by the sounds, not only on the field but off it. Well, in all areas.
Yeah, in all areas. But I think Fraser, he's brilliant, mate. He's one of those players that he's an absolute workhorse, but he always just pops up around the ball.
Yeah.
He can smell those opportunities before they've even happened. So he's got that rugby brain that I guess you're saying Michael Hooper had it. And he's probably, to be fair, he's probably modelled his game off Michael Hooper, given how good Hoops was. He's a leader in defence, attack, and he's a crucial cog in our wheel.
Now, we're talking with all of the teams a run a straight challenge. Who is the person you'd least like to run a straight at? But we thought for a halfback we might switch it up. Who is the person you back yourself running it straight at in Super Rugby?
Probably Darcy Swain from the Brumbies.
Oh, really?
I love that.
You might end up in a coffin.
Yeah, he's obviously pretty popular in New Zealand as well.
Yeah, no, he's highly loved over here. The fan club's over in the corner there waiting.
I call good halfbacks. They're short of a jam.
Cocky Aussie halfbacks, eh? Running at big bruising forwards and thinking they'll get away with it.
Bryn, you and Artie?
No, not me, mate. Not me.
He won't be doing that. Now, one of the most interesting things what's come up from the last week is Kevin Malloy, the Super Rugby chair, talking about opening up player movement within Super Rugby. His hypothetical was Artie Savia maybe playing over in Australia and how that'll affect the landscape of the competition. Probably make it look like other sports competitions in the world rather than being so inwardly focused within each nation, considering the All Blacks policies for selections, etc. That's why it's gone that way. We also had an email, and we appreciate your emails. Please email us at Aotearoa Rugby Pod at sky.co.nz from Winston Stowers. He also sent a very similar message the week before on YouTube. So Winston, glad we can finally get to your question. We keep talking about stronger and stronger Australia teams. What do you think if New Zealand Rugby expanded the selection for ABs into the whole competition, allowing for some of our players to get time starting in Oz, who might have been on the bench here, allowing more options for us across the board as New Zealand? Marquee players within a salary cap similar to the NFL could make the competition interesting and would allow us to see new combinations across the board. Bryn, what do you think of that as a concept? Is it something that this competition needs?
Just a clear no for me. I don't think it does. I think when this was first talked about, it's because obviously the competition of the Australians and the Super Rugby Pacific weren't up to par. But I think with how, to think the direction now with, we talked around the Reds and even the Waratahs and, the teams performing now, I don't think it should be opened. I think, I think it's quite cheeky on the Australian side to try and bring in some New Zealand players that are obviously playing at a high level and obviously are within the All Blacks environment. But no, I just think there's too many things that shouldn't be done, and I think that's one of them. Them not, getting the best New Zealand talent going to Australia and trying to help them out.
Heart says no, because depth is with even Moana Pacifica coming in, the talent pool depth has shrunk. You've got MLR taking, I suppose that sort of replacement player pool, but in saying that, unlocking the Australian market in terms of engagement much bigger. And the opportunity to grow the competition, something like this potentially could be the key to doing that and getting, I suppose, Australian fans back engaged into Super Rugby. So I think it would have to be marquees. I would be disappointing to see players that may be on the bench going over, because I think we've seen that with the Rebels and the Force and it hasn't worked.
Chase Tiatir, etc.
Yeah, and it's not going to do the job what I think Kevin Malloy is hinting at, and that would be eyes on our game. So those marquee opportunities, potentially, but selfishly, no. I'd be devastated, say Rico signed for the Waratahs and left the Blues as a Blues fan.
Yeah.
It would cut me.
And saying that, we're more than happy to see Pablo Matera come and play for the Crusaders. It is, we like it the other way. Bryn,
Not necessarily. Sometimes I feel like that's taking an opportunity for someone that's been around.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sold on that.
Not 100% on that.
No. Only in the sense that there is absolutely no one and there's, it's too early to just throw someone in sink or swim. Get that. Totally understand that. But trying to keep our talent and keeping every spot available. But again, that brings eyes to the game. So I'm sitting on the fence here, which is very rare, because on one side I want us to win and I want a New Zealand team to win every time. But I understand we've got to change something to get our game. And you look at the weekend, rugby's back, I genuinely believe that. I was in shock, and, you start reading deeper into the games and how other people saw it. And, it's not just there it goes again.
Yeah, you'd love a bit of Fraser McWright in the Blues.
Oh, I would. How good is he, man? Is he like the support line king? Like, seriously, it's like, honestly, as soon as, I actually, on that note, I thought Vunivalu was outstanding. I had a bit of a crack at him last week saying, get off your wing and do some work like Mark Talia. And he stayed on his wing when he needed to, and he came and got engaged and freed up through that midfield a little bit. But yeah, McWright.
Yeah.
How good. Just like...
A 1-2 punch with Dalton Papali'i at the Blues. You'd be a big fan.
Oh, I don't know. The only concern there as a hooker is the height and the line out. So there's a few things to weigh up.
Yeah.
Maybe Dalton go to Queensland and Fraser can come to us just as a sense test. Just test it out.
And so what Aussie would you like to bring into a Kiwi side then?
I don't actually know off the top of my head who's someone that's running around that I really would like. Probably a Taniela Tupou. I think he'd be a good one to bring in. I think considering that he was at Sacred Heart, as well, and having that New Zealand connection. But I think he's one guy in Australia has that superstar power, and I think in the right environment, I think the Crusaders wouldn't mind him right now. So yeah, Taniela Tupou coming to the Crusaders wouldn't be a bad option actually.
Let's talk a little bit about the Blues and the Hurricanes. Hurricanes got up 29-21. It certainly wasn't picked by us, but the Hurricanes are Bryn's dark horse for this whole competition, so possibly pricked by Bryn as well. They made a big decision to go with a 6-2 split. They copped 2 HIAs to their 2 backs, and next thing you know, they've got a halfback playing on the wing, Bryn. What did you make of that decision? I mean, we've seen the Springboks win with it, but geez, you're rolling the dice.
Oh, well, that's it, isn't it? If you have a 6-2 split or a 7-1 split, as coaches, you just don't bank on them getting injured. And the fact that it happened in the first 15 minutes and you had a 9 playing on the wing, not just more so on the attacking side. It's obviously there's a lot of things that go with being on the attack, but the defensive side, you look at the ability of them being able to score a couple of times at Funaki and fullback. Who was the reserve fullback? Chipper, what's his name?
Forbes.
They went on the same guy, and so whether they did the what ifs in terms of like defensively of what his role might look like, but yeah, there's just a lot of things that come with having that 6-2 split, and you saw that on the weekend with Funaki, who I actually thought, considering hasn't played a lot of winger, did his job pretty well considering. So
I just felt, could they have split them up? I just felt the poor guys just were like defensively it is hard. Like attacking wouldn't have been an issue. Everyone knows attacking; they'll know their role there. But defensively, I think that's where it was showing up, and it's no fault of theirs because defence, as we spoke about England, it's reps. And sometimes they both jammed on the same player, and then one held off and one shot, and the Hurricanes were too good. They just kept going there. They knew that that's where they could test them, and they got the full reward and a little bit of freakishness from Naholo.
Yeah. Just on there, like an example of that, Jip, with the winger, we talked about it before we came on air around, with the winger, Mark Talia defends in that first channel right next to the line out more, and it's been able to just, why would you not put Funaki in and around that area, which is, it's very similar for a 9 to slip in just outside the ruck, outside the maul, and then have Mark Talia play both sides of the wings and trying to help out in that terms, especially when it comes to, line out strikes close to the line where that 13 winger zone and 15, it's really hard to defend.
Massively. And it's that kick space as well.
Yeah.
I just think maybe, just so unfortunate. And look, I still think they fought well to be in it, but it almost felt when that happened, the Hurricanes grew an arm and a leg, and there was some brilliance though as well. Like Kenny Naholo's performance was pretty.
He could beat a man.
Yeah. He's just getting better and better, and between him and Tavatava Nawai, proving to be 2 of the hardest men to stop, and Sevu Reece as well.
Yeah.
I thought Sevu was outstanding.
And Ravu Tamanda.
Yeah. Oh, he wins.
Yeah.
He wins actually.
He's so good.
He is so good.
Man.
So is that
incredible.
What's your top 5 look like? Top 5 players who are impossible to tackle?
Look, Tavatava Nawai's in there and Naholo. I reckon Parisi's pretty. When he's
great
fit,
game on the weekend.
when he's fit, he's an explosive athlete. He would leave someone like me at sea. Who else is Cam Roygar is proving hard to put down just to get a mention for my boy Cam. I don't know. What do you think, Bryn?
I reckon Rabu Tomata.
Yeah.
That guy, you can't stop. Yeah. He's so fast and so explosive. And you look at that try that he scored on the weekend, like, he had no right to score that. And that kind of small window, that wasn't in terms of like how he usually is with the speed, and it shows how fast he is, but his ability to be able to beat that defender with strength and then footwork. Yeah, gee, he's a full package, I reckon. I love watching him play for the Fiji and Draw.
Braden Yossi's another one, actually.
Yeah.
He just seems to always break a tackle.
Yep, he's very, very strong. And we're obviously talking about other stuff, but man, how good was Ruben Love as well on the weekend? Geez, we talked around it a little bit earlier around the fullbacks, and with Will Jordan being injured, I think he is just growing so much in the past couple of weeks. I think his distribution jump under pressure, I think, that's a big part in terms of how the attacking game is at the moment, especially trying to get that ball to the whip. I think arguably you'd have to say in the first 3 weeks of the competition, he'd be the best guy to get that ball away under pressure. And I think he had 3 try assists on the weekend, and we know his attacking ability, but I think as a run, pass, kick, and even defensively, man, he's having a hell of a start to this year.
I tell you what, I did some work on the weekend with Goldie, and he's a big Ruben Love fan.
Is he?
Like he's a hard man to impress in that back 3 area, and he was saying he reckons he could have been the difference to beating, and he picked the Canes. He said, I think they're the sleeper. They'll beat the Blues. But yeah, I think his ability to get that ball away, and what I like about the Hurricanes as well, similar to the Chiefs when Sean's at 15, they've got clear roles. It's Brett Cameron's ship, and you inject when you can. But it's very, very clear that calmness of Brett Cameron is critical to getting their game going.
He kicks good goals.
Yep. No, he's very good. He's actually a fantastic fit for the X factor that is in and around him.
Yeah.
Not that he doesn't have the X factor, it's more he just has that calm and composure. And he's another player that he's never inactive. Like, if you watch the good first receivers in behind that forward pod, they're always engaged. I was talking to Aaron Cruden about it at the Rebels Minor Pacifica game, and I was like, my biggest frustration as a forward is if I'm here and you're not active out the back, defence is like, oh, we're just going to tee off on you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they're like out here organising this, and he used to pride himself. Aaron said, I prided myself on always being there, and he said to his ball players, he goes, even if you don't, if I don't call it and you think it's on, you put it there, I'll be there. And he was like, I was religious on it, I would always be there. And it creates opportunity, and it gives the player with the ball confidence to make a decision and pull the trigger. I thought it was really interesting. Like he would, and if he wasn't there and it went, he would always, put his hand up, sort of thing. So it was very interesting because Brett Cameron's very similar. He's always engaged. He's always active. So you have to mark him, sort of like Moanga used to do. Moanga would always go out the back outside that forward tip runner. They're always the best 10s because it just makes it so much harder. But also, if a Yossi's there or a Karifi, or it gives them or an Almoa to just bloody go after it and then open up that little pass out the back.
Let's switch from the Crusaders, the champions of Super Rugby, through to Aupiki, where Mata 2, the champions of Aupiki, are also having a really tough time. Don't know what's happening in Christchurch right now, but it's not going well, Bryn. They lost to the Hurricanes Power. Now, you picked it. 36-29 to the Power. A game where the Power were coming in after a fair bit of media coverage during that week, and to put on a performance like that was quite a performance.
It was impressive, but this is the one pick I probably got right. That was, I suppose, ambitious. For most, but what I saw live against the Manawa, man, like you knew they had, talk about set piece, good defence, great around the breakdown. They had all that, they've got all the ingredients there. And look, Mata 2 still pushed them. I mean, it was equal level peggings going into the last 5 minutes, so it wasn't easy, but some of their stats were outstanding. 60% of the time over the gain line. They've got some really outstanding midfielders. Shakira Baker was great.
Oh, yeah.
On the weekend. I'm really a big fan of the two Kings. Obviously the first 5, but the loose forward, blindside flanker as well. Not big in stature, but they get into their work and not afraid. There's a lot to like, and a potential finals berth. Looming for them. So, that battle with the Blues is going to be interesting. Because the Blues probably let one go if we're being honest on the weekend in terms of opportunities.
Yeah.
It's very rare you see the Manawa with 26 turnovers. Previous week 9.
Yeah.
9 turnovers against Apollo, and they were pushed hard there. But their defence saved them. That goal line D in that first half, how the Blues didn't score, I don't know. There's this one tackle, watch the replay, of Luke O'Connor. I can't remember, someone picks up and dummies from the Blues, and the rock shot off there.
Yeah.
So it's like, in my head I was like, oh, this is try time. Boom for.
What do you mean the rock shot off?
The defender that's right by the breakdown sort of fell for the dummy, went out here, and Luke O'Connor just slipped in here and just crushed her. It was impressive, and some great pressure through the midfield. Steinmetz was outstanding, so it was a defensive win. Certainly wasn't an attacking win for the Manawa.
The Blues, Bryn, silly errors, charge down conversions, crazy plays off penalty kicks, bring it back into touch when they didn't need to. Unforced error for that possible equalising try, just lack of composure, just across the board.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think, considering, I probably thought the Chiefs would actually be doing a little bit more comfortable, but I think the Blues, in hindsight, if they get them again in a semi-final, final stage, they'll know that, they made a lot of unforced errors and probably should have won that game. You look at that last passage of play where, the reserve halfback comes on and it's a little knock on there, but that was kind of the recipe, I think, for the whole game. They put the Chiefs under a lot of pressure, and they did make uncharacteristic mistakes throughout a lot of that game, the Manawa, but the Blues were able to do that with the way that they were playing. And so the composure, I think, they didn't get that right, but they'll take a lot of confidence in knowing that they can. If they get it right, a little bit better, they don't have to do much better, but if they get it right, they'll back themselves knowing that experience that they had, that they should have won that game, give them belief going into that semi-final, final stage against a Chiefs Manawa.
I think they're frustrated. That was there. That'll frustrate
100%.
them. I was sitting next to the Blues coaching box, and you could sense a hell of a lot of frustration because that was their moment.
Yeah. Now, we did have a request online for people overseas who are trying to figure out what's going on within Aupiki for where these franchises are from. So the Blues women are with the Blues out of Auckland. The Poa, they're the Hurricanes team out of Wellington. Chiefs Manawa, the Chiefs team, obviously based out of Hamilton. And then Matatu is a combination of the Highlanders and the Crusaders. So that's, for the overseas viewers, the makeup of these 4 teams within Aupiki. There was a question online, so appreciate that question. It's good to clear those things up and make it easy to follow. Super Rugby tipping. Please join our Super Rugby tipping competition, our league, Aotearoa Rugby Pod League. It was a bloodbath on the weekend. Didn't go well for a lot of people, apart from a bloke called Delta Hurricanes.
I can't believe
who got 5 right.
How's he done it?
That is unbelievable.
Nah, how have you done it? You must have 2. You must have 2.
And I know it's not luck the way that, because I forgot to make my picks, and I only got 2. And I think if I'd made my picks, I would have only got 2 anyway. It just randomly went the other way. But it had to have been choices. It can't have been luck of the draw.
No. 5. I just would love to know which one he missed. Because if he's picked the Reds, that's a hell of a pick.
Yeah.
Hurricanes I can get, that was always going to be 50-50, but that sort of Reds win, I think it caught everyone by surprise.
Yeah.
I suppose the Hurricanes as well.
Right. Now, if you win our Super Rugby tipping competition, at the end of the year, we'll get you on the show. Let's have a look at who we're picking this week. Bryn, the Crusaders against the Hurricanes. Crusaders at home. Does the winless streak end now?
If they can fix up the areas that we did talk around with their set piece and the execution areas, not being able to make as many mistakes, they have shown in that Chiefs game that when they do get it right, there's belief that they can get it done. So the Hurricanes will be buoyed with their start and being at the top of the table, being undefeated. But I'd like to think that the Crusaders will get a few things right and be a better result. So, yeah, I'm hoping.
Is that glass? it's more than half full, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, I'm going to go to the Canes purely. We didn't touch on it before, but Stephen Pettifetta had 19 carries. That's a high carry count for a first receiver, and that's purely from that rush defence that Corey Jane loves and really gets in that eye line. First receivers push them back where they want, take them out of the game, and it just stems the flow. So if Kemera or Havili is at 10, that'll be the manipulation of that, especially early with potential kicking game, will be crucial if they are to win this. Because for me, it was a big defensive win and a big reason why the Canes sort of stunted the flow of the Blues. So I think they'll get it done against the Crusaders.
Cool. Rebels against the Reds. Reds all day.
Reds.
Yeah. How did you have to think about that?
Well, the Rebels have got 2 wins, admittedly against 2 pretty average teams, but they are currently sitting in 4th place on the table.
They will have to be much, much better to beat the Reds.
Yeah, they will do. They will do. Okay, Force against Moana Pacifica.
I lost faith in Moana Pacifica.
Yeah, I picked the Force on the week. I picked the Moana on the weekend, and I just think, just losing faith in the fact that they give you a little bit of confidence with that result over the draw, but then I think, logistically, there's just a lot of stuff off the field, and I think the travel factor, and I just think the Force have been in and around there for the games. I just think, until I can see them being 1 or 2 games, and they show more improvement, just hard to pick them. So I'm going to go the Force.
Highlanders got up against the Tars. Tars again were relatively impressive.
They were very good, statistically as well.
Yeah. Their chances at home against the Brumbies appear to be pretty good.
Oh, yeah. I think the Highlands, I don't know what's up with the Brumbies. A little bit like the Crusaders. It's just very uncharacteristic the way they're playing these games. And you look at the team, there's not much shift, not much change. I just don't know. The mojo just is not there. It was the same in pre-season. I don't know. The Brumbies just, and I think travelling to under the roof, you heard the after match interviews straight away. They're like, we can't wait to get back to under the roof. They just love playing there. So
Highlanders, Fubrin.
Yeah, I'm going the same. Yeah, I think a great result. Obviously, would have been obviously wanted to have it a little bit better in terms of the result, but in terms of the how much they won by. But to get a result in Sydney against the Waratahs, for a team that probably hasn't won a lot in the last 12 to 24 months, it's a great result for them, and I think they'll continue to keep getting better, especially being at home with Petrel, Fakatava, AJ Falianga. I think was awesome when he came on and his injection. So I think they're making some good inroads for the season with the Highlanders. So I'm going to pick them this week. Okay, so I'm expecting you to go Chiefs v Drua. That's in Hamilton, yeah? Yep. Yeah, if that was in Fiji, I'd pick them. But nah, I don't get it done against it. I'm back.
Chiefs for me.
Chiefs for you. And the Tars versus the Blues.
Blues.
This is Blues, but not a straightforward pick.
No, not after last week, I don't think. But I do think that bench situation played a lot, and there's it's more respect to the Canes that, as I said, they shut Stevie down quite well, who's been in good form. So it'll be interesting what the team looks like. Do those players, because they're both key players, do they pass the HIA2 and 3 to allow them to play? If not, it'll be interesting to see the makeup of the teams. It's definitely 50-50, I think, but I'm just being honest, I will pick the Blues.
Because you love the Blues. Bryn, you don't. Former Blues player, but not the same love for the Blues.
I think we've done this podcast for 5 years now. I don't think Jip's ever gone against the Blues ever in 5 games.
But I am open about that I'm never going to do it. I will be factual, just like I picked the Blues against the Manawa, but I said the Manawa will win.
Yeah.
But I'm picking the Blues.
Have you picked against the All Blacks?
No.
You haven't?
I don't think so.
Bryn's picked against the All Blacks.
Oh, you have once.
Yeah, did you have once?
We have.
Did I pick?
I think we did once in South Africa.
Oh, and then they won.
And then they won, yeah. Ellis Park. Yeah, so you're never going to do that again.
Oh, never.
We'll call you the motivator, James Parsons.
Oh, I tell you what, I've motivated the Tars. Darren Coleman will be calling me directly if they win this weekend. Good Lord.
I'm going Blues.
You're going Blues. Okay, right here. Okay. Well, that's that sorted. Please get on board with our tipping comp at tipping.super.rugby. And hey, if you can beat Delta Hurricanes, who's currently on 15 over the course of 16 weeks, you're going to be a pretty damn good picker, because those picks on the weekend were
freakish.
Something else. So thank you very much for joining us once again on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. We've had lots of questions come in on the email and within the YouTube comment section. Can't get to all of them, but we will try to throw them in as we go within the context of the conversations. We had questions about AI refereeing, questions about identification process in New Zealand when England are taking all these young guys like Ethan Root, and questions about the size of the bench, which I think is one we should get to next week when we've got a little bit of time, because it's a really interesting one from Drew Muir. So we'll get to that as soon as we can. Thank you very much for joining us on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. You can catch us on all Sky platforms. You can catch us on YouTube. You can catch us on Rugby Pass TV as well from this week onwards. So that's another platform for you to get us on your television. So expanding as much as we can. Thank you very much to James Parsons.
Thank you, Ross.
Once again, appreciate your time, and to Bryn Hall as well. Thank you, mate. All the best. And he's out. And we're out. Thank you very much for joining us. Mā te wā.